Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, The Unhinged Father, and this is the Unhinged Father podcast. Hope everyone's having a fantastic week so far. Let's go ahead and jump on right into the episode. So, this week, the thing that's really been a top of mind for me is this internal conflict I'm having about new school versus old school mentality. And this pops up a lot for me throughout my life, in my personal life, my work life, my parenting life, pretty much across all the different spectrums of who I am. I have this constant conflict between the old school way that I was raised and thought versus like some of the new school stuff that I've learned, some of the softer, gentler things that I've learned as a parent, as an adult. And this conflict is constantly going on. It's something that I struggle with, is which side is right? Which side should I take? And what's the route that I should go in order to best serve myself, serve my coworkers, serve my friends, serve my kids, serve my wife? Which route should I go? What's the right answer? And I don't know what the right answer is. If I had all the right answers, I wouldn't be sitting here in my office fucking talking to y'all right now. I'd be sitting on a beach in Hawaii, drinking a Mai Tai and living the good life. But that doesn't mean we can't sit here and discuss it and try and figure out what is the right direction to go. What's the right course of action to take for you, for your life, for everyone around you. And it's going to be different for everyone. Not everyone goes the same path, and that's okay. Some people do things the way that I do it, and some people are wrong. That's all right. Anyways, there's a couple of specific examples of this that I wanted to dive in today. One of them is something that I actually tried to have this episode or talk about this in a previous episode, started recording and just didn't like the way that it was coming out. I sounded like I was just going on a bitch fest of parents nowadays, and that's not what I want to do. Although I'm going to point out areas that frustrate me or that I struggle with. But if you spend any time on social media, or if you follow any of like the gentle parenting pages, Insta moms, child psychologists, all of that stuff, one of the things that's like a very constant theme that pops up is having self-compassion for yourself, giving yourself a break and acknowledging that things are hard and that's okay, that it's okay for you to not be okay. Now, on the surface, I agree with this. I think that this is a great thing, something that should be incorporated into our lives. We should have some self-compassion. We should know that things are not always going to go the way that we want, and that raising children, having a family is fucking hard. It's a difficult thing to do. Where I start to struggle is when I start to see people, I don't know how to put this softly, but basically people stroking their own egos in this self-compassion. And what I mean by that is that they're like, something hard comes along and then they'll go on Insta Media, and then they'll go on Instagram or TikTok or some social media, and they'll just bitch and moan about how like my life is so hard. I need to give myself some grace. And they'll have like the sappy music playing in the background. And then you find out it's just some like mundane thing that they're going through. It becomes so dramatic and so dramatized that it's almost like, I don't know if you're really struggling with this or if you're just being a little bitch for social media and complaining about it. Like, two things can be true at the same time. You can be having a hard time. Things can be difficult. You can give yourself some grace and some acceptance, but like, you don't need to go on this depressive spiral where you're just like moping and stewing in your own self wallow. And like I said, it's okay to give yourself some grace. But when I see people make videos, like 5-minute long videos where they're just like wallowing and saying, I can't handle it. And it's like, well, what happened? It's like, well, my child told me no after I told them to do something. I don't know. It makes me like recoil instinctually. I don't know what it is. If it's just that old school mentality of, hey, the buck ends here. And like, you're the parent, you're the person who needs to, at the end of the day, step up, be there for your kids, be there for your spouse. And it's okay that you're having a hard time. You can give yourself some grace. Like, you don't need to come down on yourself. But at the end of the day, you do need to be the one who does something about it, who fixes the things that need to happen or does what needs to happen. And we can do hard things. We're built for it. Human beings are capable of doing some pretty extraordinary things. And it takes a little bit of grit and resilience in order to do that. And this is the part where I kind of struggle with. This is where that line gets blurred. And it happens when I'm also, trying to teach my kids things is, am I being too gentle and too soft with them on certain things? Or do I need to be a little bit harder on them? Do I need to make them do certain things or not give them as much leeway in certain aspects, right? I need to make sure that I'm teaching them about grit and resilience and make sure that they don't just go through life thinking that everything's going to be handed to them on a silver platter, because that's not going to happen. So yeah, this is where that line blurs for me. I'm not really sure how to differentiate when to be softer, kinder, gentler, to give people grace, or when to be like, hey, it's time for you to just, buck up, tough shit, get in there, get it done. And that goes for kids, for parents, grandparents, any person in this world. Now, I mentioned this before. One of my favorite movies was Heavyweights. Love that movie. And it just reminds me sometimes when I see these social media movies or reels, it reminds me of Ben Stiller's character, and he starts giving himself like this little pep talk. He's like, oh, it's okay, little Tony. It's not your fault. It's their fault. They're terrible people. That's right, little Tony. And he's just sitting there having this mental break and like consoling himself and like making these excuses and trying to like self-rationalize why things are happening the way that they're happening. And that's where I think I just cut it off. It's like, dude, it's okay that things are going not so well right now. It's okay that you're upset, that things are hard. It's okay that you're struggling. I see that, but don't sit there and wallow in it. You need to acknowledge it, process it, and then move on with your life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get comments or likes or people on social media being like, it's okay. It's almost like they want this attention to have other people that they may not even fucking know just be like, it's okay. You're okay. You're doing a great job, mama. You're doing a great job, dad. Like, don't let anyone tell you differently. Well, what if you're not doing a good fucking job? What if you're doing a shit job? See, two things can be true at the same time. You're having a hard time and you're doing a shitty job. And sometimes for me, doing this now with the podcast and having to do postings and on Reddit and asking questions and shit like that, sometimes I post stuff and it's not necessarily for people to give me reassurance. Like when I posted that picture of myself, because I'm a fat fuck with my shirt off and the journey that I'm on, it's not because I want people to sit there and go on Instagram or on Facebook like, oh, like, good job. You're doing such a good thing. Like, way to take control of your life. That's all good stuff to hear, but I'm not doing it for that. I'm putting these pictures up there because it's a vulnerable thing for me to do, and I'm trying to better myself. It's the action itself that makes me feel better, feels good about myself, and like that I'm being stronger and I'm being vulnerable with other people and I'm taking a risk here. And even though it's not really a risk, there's no risk in me putting up pictures on social media, but it's not for the external validation that people feel they need to give within that. And I do feel that to a certain extent, a lot of times when parents are posting these videos on social media and saying how hard they have it and how their life is so difficult and these hardships that they're going through, I feel like they're looking for external validation to feel good about themselves, get that hit of dopamine, and they're almost like addicted to it. And yes, it's okay to give yourself a break. Like I'm going to continue to say, two things can be true. You can be struggling, you can be having a hard time, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with you as the parent, as a person, just in general, in life. The buck should stop with you, and you're going to be okay. You're going to make it through whatever issues you're going through. Everyone always seems to come out the other side better, stronger. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but we can do hard things. Now, I also struggle with this. If anyone knows me, I can push back real hard when people give me unsolicited advice, even though I'm sitting here giving all of you unsolicited advice on just my random ADHD brain firing of all of the neurons in my head, just spitting out whatever I think. But it really bugs me when it's like parents or grandparents, and it's not necessarily what they say, it's how they say it, how they express it. And I do struggle sometimes with blending the old school way of parenting with some of the newer school, gentle parenting aspects of parenting. And this could be, talking about gentle parenting, different parenting techniques. That could be a whole episode in and of itself. But one aspect that I wanted to really dive into is I've been hearing a lot of like newer parents who are along the same lines of like gentle parenting. They're millennial parents, maybe a little bit older than me. But one of them just said like, hey, I can't brush my kids' teeth. They're like 3 or 4 years old. And they're like, they just won't let me brush their teeth. They won't do it. We can't brush their teeth. They have a bunch of cavities. And no matter what we do, no matter what tactics we take, they just start screaming. They won't let us brush their teeth. And we're at our wits' ends. We just haven't been able to brush their teeth. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, like I get it. My son hates brushing his teeth as well. It's a pain in the ass. But at the end of the day, the kid gets his fucking teeth brushed because he needs to brush his teeth. He needs to have good hygiene. I don't want to have to, repair a bunch of damage that could be prevented. And it's difficult. But my job as a parent is to make sure that my kids are doing the hard things that they need to do to make sure that they stay safe, that they stay healthy, that they're on the right path in life. And brushing your teeth is just a very small example of this. And so it took everything inside of me not to just tell this person like, well, fucking, you need to hold them down and brush their teeth then. Not like in an aggressive way, not like, you pin them down and start beating them until they, submit to you and open their mouths and let you brush them. But I give my elder son the choice. You want to do this the hard way or the easy way? And if he doesn't answer within a timely manner, or if he whines, or if he says the hard way, sometimes he says it trying to be a little dickhead. We do it the hard way. I get him a wrestler, hold down his arms, have him open his mouth and brush his teeth. And he whines and he bitches and complains and says that it sucks. He's not getting hurt. There's no like physical harm befalling him, but his teeth are getting brushed. And guess what? The next time he says, Dad, I don't want to do it the hard way. I want to do it the easy way. And he still may bitch and moan. He still may complain. He still may say, well, I want to keep playing. But he does eventually give in and let me brush his teeth. And that's something that I think that a lot of parents have forgotten. It's like, we are bigger than our kids. There's a reason we're bigger than our kids, because they're not going to want to do all of the things that we need them to do or that they need to do in life to be happy, healthy, safe, all of these things. Sometimes it comes down to you need to physically help your children do things that are good for them. And before you guys call, Child Protective Services, no, I'm not saying sit there and beat them and hit them or do anything like that. There are different levels of physicality when it comes to discipline in children. And all I'm talking about is if they're hitting someone, you restrain them. If they refuse to brush their teeth, then you need to lay them down and brush their teeth for them. Just like if they refuse to take medicine, right? They've got an ear infection and they have to take their antibiotics. You're going to have to make them take that medicine. Sometimes that requires you to, put the thing in their mouth and make sure that they drink it. These are the hard aspects of being a parent, and they're not fun, but they're necessary. So that's the old school aspect of this that I get. Now there's the other side of it where I push back on some of the old school mentality, is that you should be giving your kids choices and that you should be trying to take their feelings into consideration as much as you possibly can. Like, it should be a partnership. And actually, when you could get them to feel like it's a partnership, you make them feel good about doing something like a big boy did, they tend to actually buy into the actions more. I've had some grandparents and great grandparents who essentially say like, well, you're being too nice to the kids. You just need to tell them to do this. And you don't always have to resort to the old school tactics or physical restraint or any of those other things that I just talked about. That doesn't have to be your first line of parenting. I usually reserve that for last resort. Like, the kid is just not doing what I need to do. We have to get it done. Let's do it. But up to that, it's usually me trying to reason, trying to get them to be on my team, trying to empathize with them. Like, hey, I know that you hate doing this, but it's something that needs to be done, and explaining the importance of it to them. So yeah, that's a little bit into my feelings on some of the old school, new school mentality when it comes to parenting, physical restraint. Again, don't report me. I'm not sitting here beating the shit out of my kids. I promise you they are happy, healthy, relatively well-adjusted little dudes. And look, I also want to acknowledge that you're going to lose your shit once in a while. And for me, when I lose my shit, it's not like me sitting in the shower and crying while I'm sitting underneath a cold shower and taking an Instagram video while I sit there and cry about how my kid refused to brush their teeth and there was nothing I could do. I was powerless to stop them. No, when I lose my shit, I get angry. I raise my voice. I could yell. And these things can have like a short-term impact on the kid and make them fall into whatever behavior that you want them to do. But long-term, it's hurting your relationship. And that's where some of the old school people that tell you to be mean, we had a huge argument with, not a huge, but we had an argument with one of the parents in me and my wife's life. And they were talking about spanking and hitting and all of the other things that come with like discipline. And something that's not taken into consideration as much by the older generations is that, like, yes, you can do all of these things. If you hit your kid or if you threaten them with physical harm or, you do any of these like old school things that they did with kids, they will behave in that moment, most likely, right? If you scream at your kid, they're most likely going to start crying and then they're going to listen to what you want them to do. Short term, yeah, you won that battle. Long term, you're creating bigger issues down the road for yourself and for that child, right? They're going to have issues that pop up in terms of their attachment and feeling like the person that was supposed to be their safe space is actually unsafe and that they can't have their own needs, they can't have their own wants, that it's not okay to do that stuff. And for you, you're also potentially fucking up your relationship with your kids down the road, right? Everyone always says like, you guys all turned out fine. That's great. There are kids in war-torn Africa that turn out okay. If that's the bar we're setting is like you turn out okay, that's a pretty fucking low bar. I want to make sure that my kids want to have a relationship with me when they're older, when I'm older. I want to make sure that like when we have family events, that it's a happy and healthy gathering and it's not just full of tension and anger. I don't want it to be a chore for my kids to want to hang out with me, for them to bring their kids and see their grandparents. Yes, I want to make sure that my kids listen and they get stuff done, but I also want to foster a relationship for them. So when they're older, that we have a good relationship. I guess if I were to break it down in terms of just like rearing kids, life in general, a lot of different things, if you had like a spectrum of discipline and affection, I think that the best route to go would be to have a high level of discipline or order or rules, and to also have a high level of affection. Just because you have rules, just because you have order, just because you have discipline, that does not need to mean that you're a dick to your kids, that you're always angry, that you're always yelling. You can still be playful, funny, have a good time with them, show them lots of love. You can do all of these things and still maintain boundaries, discipline, rules. And it's hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not fucking perfect. I'm the furthest thing from this. The reason I'm having this episode is because I still question whether or not the things that I'm doing are actually good for my kids. And you know what? I won't fucking know until they're older. So I guess that's why I'm doing this, right? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What are your thoughts? Do you have kids? Do you want kids? Are you ready for this shit? I want to hear from you. I want to know. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Do you think I'm a real dickhead? Do you think I'm a DILF? Just saying. Anyways, now I'm getting off the rails here. ADHD, just cruising on in, taking over the episode. At the end of the day, I love my kids. I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good partner to my wife. And even though I'm working on myself constantly, I still have these struggles of old school, new school mentality. And I guess I'm just trying to find a way to blend them both together to make the best system for me and the best system for my family. I want to hear how you do it. And if it's different, that's great. Maybe I can incorporate some of that into my life. If you like some of the things I said here, maybe you'll incorporate it in yours. Who knows? But that's going to do it for this week's episode. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy the episode and you're not already doing so, go ahead and give me a follow on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasting needs met. If you did enjoy this episode as well, or you enjoy any other content, please share it with friends, family members, people you dislike. really anyone at this point. There's a little button. You can click on it. It's share the episode, send it to someone that you think would benefit from this. I really appreciate you sharing the show. But other than that, I really hope that everyone has a fantastic rest of the week. Have a great weekend. And as always, be good, try hard, do your best.